Welcome back to my Taoism blog. Today, I want to go over the Tao Teh Ching a little bit more thoroughly than I did in the introduction video, and give you some information on it and best ways to use it, read it, and study it. I want to first go ahead and point out one of the reasons for me doing the blog in the way that I'm doing it is that anybody can go to Wikipedia and look something up. That's not hard. So it really does me no good to sit here on YouTube and talk about things that you could have just typed in a couple of words on Wikipedia and found all that information. That's extraneous. So there's really no reason for me to do that. Instead, what I want to do is I want to give you some base information. If you are completely new to Taoism and you don't have that information yet, but just to let you know, you can just go get it anywhere on the internet. But I want to give you the kind of things that I was looking for when I first got into it and I couldn't find. A lot of the videos you're going to see on YouTube and a lot of the things you'll see elsewhere on the internet about Taoism are either really, really general or they're extremely specific. Either it's going to be base information that you're going to see over and over and over again, historical information that's useless, or it's going to be so very specific to some form of Taoist mysticism or something like that that you're not actually going to get the answers that you're looking for if you had some of the same questions that I did. So to start with, just some very basic information. The Tao Teh Ching is attributed to Lao Tzu, who wrote it in the 6th century, according to legend. I'm going to give you a lot more information on Lao Tzu in a later video. For now, I'll just tell you a little bit about the legend behind how the Tao Teh Ching supposedly came into being. Lao Tzu was a recorder for the court in the Zhou dynasty in China, and there was not a lot of detail about how he came up with this subject matter. But needless to say, after all his philosophizing and meditation, he eventually came to the decision that society was just too corrupt, and he couldn't be a part of the government anymore. He couldn't be a part of the society as it stood. Because the truth that was right in front of their eyes, they just weren't seeing. So he needed to leave. So he gets on an oxen and starts to head out of the city. And on the way out, a guard at the gate asked him if he would write down his lessons for the benefit of mankind. So he agrees. He gets off his ox and takes about 3 or 4 days and comes back to the guard and presents to him these 81 chapters that or verses, what I call them as precepts, but these 81 verses that make up the Tao Teh Ching. When you get yours and you look at it, you'll see that they're all very short. I think there's only a couple of them that are more than a page. So it can be very tempting to read straight through it, but I want to give you a little bit of advice on the best ways that I've found to read and study the Tao Teh Ching. One of the first things you have to realize is that the Tao Teh Ching is not very straightforward. You're going to see parables or analogies, usually followed by some kind of a breakdown and then a conclusion. And a lot of those conclusions seem to fit better in a 6th century China environment. But even then, they were meant to be a little bit confusing. And the reason why is to prevent you from reading and just taking this thing like a novel, because it's very short. You can read it in one sitting if you have a good few hours to do it. But you don't want to do that because the reason the text is set up the way it is to make you think about each individual verse and each individual chapter. So there's a couple of ways to do it, and I have a couple of rules that I like to present. And one is definitely don't read it like a novel. The second is don't find one way to read it and then be determined to stick to that way the entire time. You're going to find that it changes with your experience. When I first started, my plan was to read one verse in the morning, and then I would contemplate it throughout the day and maybe journal about it, about what my thoughts on it were, and then move on to the next one. That worked up until about verse 10. Something you have to understand about the Tao Te Ching is that every single verse has a lot of layers to it, and every single one of them can be applied to thousands and thousands of things. So you read the first precept and you get an idea of what the first precept's about. What you're going to find is later on down the line, you've got a totally new concept that applies to that first precept. And you're going to see that in these videos as well. So you're not going to read and master a verse in one sitting. Memorizing it's not going to be enough. You're going to come back and you're going to constantly find more information in this book. And I'm assuming that for a lot of you that are getting into Taoism, this was your first Taoist text. If it's not, and you haven't yet, I definitely suggest picking it up. One of the problems I have, and I mentioned in my first video, not associating really with philosophical Taoism. One of the reasons for that is a lot of the philosophical Taoists that I ran into didn't really consider the Tao Teh Ching to be an end-all. They didn't really. Some of them, honestly, I feel like they hadn't even read it. And they didn't feel like you had to apply the lessons that were in the Tao Teh Ching. If you want to do your own thing, and you want to have your own religion or your own philosophy, that's fine. But if you're going to call yourself a Taoist, you have to have some kind of a context on which to do that. And if the Tao Teh Ching is the primary Taoist text, you can't really call yourself a Taoist unless you're at least trying to apply what you think it says. Your interpretation might be strange, but you can't really, I don't see how you can call yourself a Taoist unless you're applying something from the Tao Teh Ching. The subject matter covers basically everything. There's really, like I said, you can apply any verse to any number of things. So it's very broad, and it's not really a difficult read either. One other thing I do want to point out is I think a lot of people get confused. You have to realize as you're reading this, you're reading an English translation of a very, very old Chinese text. Even people who speak Chinese can't necessarily read and comprehend the original text of the Tao Teh Ching because the syntax has changed so much, and the dialect has changed so much. So something you have to remember is that the definitions of things need to be contemplated, and we'll go through some of that too. The word nature is used. Well, nature as we define it today isn't necessarily the way Lao Tzu was defining nature. Heaven, that's another one that is used a little bit differently in our culture than it is in his, and we need to understand that. I'll give you one good example. It's just one precept that says the sage treats all things as straw dogs. When I first read that, I was kind of taken aback because I thought he was saying that the sage treats people like dogs. I figured a straw dog was a dog that sleeps in straw. Well, come to find out, it's really a dog made out of straw, a little figurine. And once you understand that and you understand what those things were used for, that text, that verse takes on a whole new meaning. And we'll get to that. But I think the biggest thing to point out is just that you're going to need to take some time on each individual precept and figure it out for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with looking things up and looking up other people's interpretations. But at the end of the day, the reason the Tao Teh Ching is the way it is isn't because it's trying to be some sage-like knowledge that only a few people can have access to. It's supposed to provoke thought and bring your mind to a higher level. And you need to realize that. You need to attain to that when you're reading and studying it. Or else you're not going to get anything out of it. Because it needs to be read by you, not just read by me or read by someone else and then interpreted for you. I'm running close to my limit here, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. This was a little bit more detailed information about the Tao Teh Ching. So I'll have another video probably in a couple of days, and I'll try to cover some more basic concepts before I can move on to some of the questions. And I also just very quickly want to say thank you very much to those of you who subscribed and sent me friend requests. That really felt good. I wasn't sure how successful this would be, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.